So I am deeply appreciative to our Sangha. Thank everybody for just being who you are. I got a text from a friend yesterday, old friends. And I was telling them how I have a new set of friends. And they're holy beings. You know, the thing about we don't have to come to grips with the past, because the past is the past. We can just leave it. I mean, it has left us. It's gone. Only we bring something up in our mind, you know, but it's not the real thing. So don't waste time. Don't waste time with regrets. Don't waste time thinking about the past, or you will miss what you're being ushered into. Yeah. So we think we're traveling alone. That's what we hear, that there's this destination, this journey, and that we have to go it alone. But we only have to go it alone if we have not met the inhabitants who are coming to welcome us. Like what do you call those people? We used to have them in the neighborhood. Welcome wagon? Yeah, you know. And they would know when you bought a house, because I think the realtor contacted them. And, you know, they'd have a basket and they'd come and they welcome you to the neighborhood. And so you can kind of get acclimated to where you're going if you stay in the present. If you go to the past, then you might have some trepidation about what the future might be like. And that's why masters come into the world. I mean, ones who've already made the journey, we call them like tukus or reincarnated masters and so forth. They come back. They take on a Nirmanakaya body. Some call it borrowed karma. And I guess maybe that could be a way to look at it. But I like what it says in the Lotus Sutra about having the capacity, have entered the gateway to everywhere, not just somewhere. Right now, we are somewhere, but they have the capacity to enter into the gateway to everywhere. So they can like just reappear or come here, they can go there, they can be anywhere that there is a being that they can comfort, that they can serve, that. And so we call this different things, depends on what our sort of spiritual appetite is. So we can call it the kingdom of heaven if we want, or the kingdom of God, or we can call it, you know, Buddha land and the Buddha nature. And, you know, but these are just words that we feel comfortable with from time to time. But sometimes we feel comfortable with certain words, and then we no longer feel comfortable with that. And so it gets expressed to us in a different way. And that's why they say there are 84,000 teachings. And that's just so we have 84,000 chances. That just means a big, big number in 500 BC. 84,000 was a really, really big number. So there's always a way for us to hear something and penetrate it in a way that we can understand something about what's happening right now. It's about what's happening right now. So when we confine our understanding of the world to words, when we narrow it down and we capture it with words, something happens that takes us away from the experience of what is happening, and it codifies it and it calcifies it, and we end up making it something that can only be alive in our thoughts, but not in our actual living. And this is what happens to us in our spiritual practice, is that we start taking the words to be the experience. The words are not the thing. But the experience can be known with all its vitality and in a real word, if we abandon the words. So there's a place in our practice that we get words, concepts, ideas about, because we have to satisfy our intellectual nature. That is an aspect of the human experience. And so we have to satisfy that to be able to move beyond it. Or we stay locked in it and we remain ordinary humans. Isn't it wonderful to know? I think about the caterpillar and the butterfly. And to me, that sort of symbolizes the state of moving from being a human being to being a Buddha. It's a change. It's a change of quality and composition, but it is a real change. And we say those words, but we don't really think of a transformation, because we think transformation means like a change of what? Change of thinking. That's what we think transformation is. But I tell you that transformation is more than just a change of thinking. When a caterpillar changes to be a butterfly, maybe we think of it like a baby that grows up to be an adult. But it's not the same thing. It changes from a classification of organized as an organized organism into something else. And if you could imagine then that transforming from a human being into a Buddha is like that, then you get an idea of how precious your human life is. It is like that jump off point where we're leaving some deficiencies and we're actually birthing and crystallizing another set of capacities that will find expression in what looks like this human body, but it is more than human. I know I'm stretching out today, but I'm sort of in that. Oh, he's like stretch.
I can't help this. Follow the caterpillar analogy. James Finnell, who was a Christian teacher, talks about this. He says the caterpillar at some point begins to become self-aware and maybe starts keeping a journal. And gets into therapy. And it really becomes, very committed to this idea of self-discovery. And starts to go on retreats. And this caterpillar wants to become the best damn caterpillar he has the capacity to be. And then one day, something very strange starts to happen. The consciousness begins to shift, and he's doing things that he doesn't even comprehend, and he probably goes through a dark night of the soul or something. He's in darkness. He's woken this thing around, and when the whole thing comes to its conclusion, there's a transformation into something that he could not have conceived in any of those activities that he engaged in to improve himself and to get to know himself. It's a term that I would have called it marvelous existence.
I think I want to talk about this life of this caterpillar and what happens in that transformation, so that you get an idea. I may have shared a little bit, maybe I haven't, about a previous master that I had. She gave a talk on the mystery of the world beyond. And I was her disciple from 95, I think, to 98, something like that. And I'm going to share a little bit about what she said. It's amazing how I'm still hearing the same thing, but you have to hear it over and over and over. And I want to go to the middle of her talk. She talked about some different levels. She says it in a little different way because she was speaking to, at this particular talk, the United Nations, but basically she was talking to a Christian audience. She says, and she was had been a Buddhist, and this is what I don't want to talk too much about Buddha nature. I'll talk about the kingdom of God within, for this particular group. So she said, what lies in this kingdom, or this Buddha Dhatu, this Buddha field? She says, why should we even bother about it? We already have enough work to do in the world. We have a job, we have secure houses, we have loving relationships. She said, but precisely because we already have all of these things, that we should be concerned about what comes next. Sounds too religious if we say kingdom of God. Let's just call it some level of higher consciousness. Yeah, people in the old days, they call it heaven. But today we like to be scientific. So we can say it's a higher level of knowledge, a higher level of wisdom, a higher consciousness. And this we can have access to. So we should know how. She said, lately in America, have you heard of the latest invention? And I think she gave this talk in 1993, that they have a machine that can put you into samadhi. Have you known about this? It's on sale in America. $400 to $700, depending on what level you want, what brand you want. This is for lazy people who don't want to meditate and just want to be right in samadhi. So I'll be brief about it. They say that this kind of machine can put you into a relaxed mental attitude, a relaxing state. And then you would achieve a higher level or tap into a higher level of your intelligence quotient. And this machine uses some selected music, outer music, because she trains in the celestial sound. And so she had to differentiate between inner music and outer music. It uses outer music, so you need earphones, and then they put some electric currents that stimulate you, and you see flashes, so you need blindfold. The earphones and the blindfold, plug this in, that's all you need for samadhi. He said, this is good for $400, very cheap. So, but our samadhi is cheap. It costs nothing. And it's forever. You don't need to charge the battery, plug it in, plug out. You don't need to go fix it because it never breaks. Says, but there is a real thing beyond this world, and it is accessible to every man. So we should want to make contact with it. And depending on the intensity of this contact, we can propel ourselves beyond our limited perception of world. And we can have a deeper level of understanding. I guess it's just like the law of physics. You want to send some rocket beyond the gravity, you got to have a lot of pushing power behind that. And when it goes so fast, it shifts and it begins to emulate and emanate a kind of light. So it looks like light. It has the properties of light. What didn't have the properties of light now has the properties of light, depending on how much pushing power was behind it. So I guess when we go fast into the beyond, she says, how to say, I speak Chinese too much. Radiate, yes, we can radiate. It's trying to find the words for each person that's sitting there. We can radiate some light also. We can also hear a kind of sound. The sound is a kind of vibration power that pushes us into a higher level of consciousness. That is the way that we go beyond this world. And what is beyond this world that is better than our world? Everything that we can imagine and what we cannot imagine. But once we experience it, then we know. No one else can tell us, really. But we have to be persistent in that. We have to be truly sincere. Otherwise, no one else can help us, because no one else can do it for us. We have to apply compulsion. It's like expecting somebody else to eat and for you to be satisfied. Beyond our world, there are many worlds. We could just say, for example, like the one that's just a little bit higher than this base physicality, what we call the astral world, maybe in Western terminology. And we just say the astral world, but you should know that there's 100,000 different levels of that world. And each level is a world unto itself. And you can say that that world represents our level of understanding. It's just like being in school and passing from grade to grade. And then slowly we move to graduation. In the astral world, we'll see many things. We call them miracles. We're tempted to call them miracles because we don't understand the nature of how it works. But if we did, we would not call them miracles. It's just ordinary functioning on that plane, or with that level of understanding, that penetration. And in this first world or first level, there are 6 kinds of miraculous, we would call it, power. We can see beyond the ordinary boundaries, the limits of our, me and a dog can be in here. A dog can see things I can't see. Well, certainly I know cats can. Dogs can hear things, and cats can. So maybe I'm not even as high as a dog or a cat. So I should have more respect for them as living beings of a different, in some ways. No, I guess 99.9% animal maybe coming in. But how many times has there been an incarnation of this Gandhava, this mind stream, into the human existence? I think sometimes some of us are bored because we've had the human experience so many times. It's like Groundhog Day, I'm back. And maybe in our memory, our close up, whatever you call the memory that's close to the outside. What is it, Jim? Our in our conscious thinking, maybe we don't remember. But buried in the recesses of the unconscious, the 8th consciousness, it's all right there. And it's like drying out, seeds. When you have seeds for a vegetable garden, you buy packets and you plant them. They're dried. You soak them in some water, they come back to life. And that's how so many things actually materialize in our life. This fluid state we have between body and mind, we should give some thought to. Yes, there is body, there is physicality. And yes, there is consciousness. But it's not like 2 things sandwiched together. there is a glue that constitutes of this and that. So it's like having a sandwich and ain't got nothing between the bread. There's something between the bread. And that's where we are a little confused. But as we start to traverse this territory to higher and higher states of consciousness, we start to focus more on the gap, what's between the two. Oh, this is going in a completely different way than where I was going. So some of this might be new for me. And so masters are always pointing to the gap. Because if we don't consider the gap, we don't like the gap. You know, whatever I know today, that's what I know. That's me, that's it. You know, when I know something else and I change my mind, that's what I know then. That's me. That's where I am. But it's that gap is where something occurred. And so we awaken to the process of transition, awakening to the process, oh my God, to the process of transition. That's part of what knowing is. It answers the question, not what, but how. And so the masters who have visited, transitioned through, experienced, and recognized the process of how appear to guide us. It's the how does this come about? And so on that first level, and there are some characteristics. There's some characteristics that become useful on this plane. It's starting to spread the peanut butter between the worlds, expansive worlds. 6 capacities. Now, 1 is expanded vision. So where we were stymied before about our visual scope, it begins to expand. We can see things that with the ordinary, just the ordinary, we couldn't see. Now, some people don't like to think about this because they, do things they don't want anybody to see. So if somebody can see these things, then they feel very uncomfortable. But along with that capacity to see is also a capacity to understand. And when you get to a space where your understanding can't handle what's seeable, then you can no longer see. A lot of times when we would go up to see Buddha Master, I would be nervous because some was told about all of the fanfare that's involved, when you go to see him and stuff. But what I'll tell you is the most frightening thing is that I was always seated up front, right in front of him, because it was only like a handful, if I took some with me, of Westerners. But looking in, the minute you looked at him, it was like, he got you down 100%, your whole story, what you did last night, what you did last week, last month, last year, last lifetime. I mean, that you knew. You didn't need a special ability. And so I would be shamed because I have this great aspiration to be a good practitioner, I really want to save living beings, except when that other little thought got in the way, I sent someone, what is it called, a reel last night. And I said, I need prayer because it was a road rage and somebody went and got out of his car, went and bust somebody's window, a woman's window behind him, because she must have, cut him off or done something. And so he takes a brick and busts her window. She tried to run over him. He got away from her. Then she just went and she tore his car up. She rammed into the back, ran around, rammed into the side, went forward, backed into the front. And I was rolling on the floor laughing. I did repent already. But I was rolling on the floor and I'm like, he got what he deserved. But I'm thinking, like, what was that in me that got watered? Some dry seed planted in the eighth consciousness is still there. I mean, it's still there. I watched that reel about 8 times. And each time I was gleeful. Nobody got hurt. She just tore his car up though. But he was the one who took it, escalated beyond words, and I went back to things like about women and men, a boyfriend and girlfriend where I felt overruled or overtaken. I went through my whole thing in that 30 seconds of watching that reel. And I got so much for that. I said, this is wrong on so many levels that we're not even going to think about this. It's just wrong. That's just it. But it reminded me of the fact that I've got these seeds in the eighth consciousness, that no matter how good I try to be, if I put them together with water, they will come back to life. They will sprout. And that's why we need the Sangha. Because the Sangha provides protection. It provides a corral, like a safety net. That when somebody's dried up and abandoned seed gets water, that they are in the safety of friends. Not to tell them what they need to do or how they need to do it or whatever, but they just hold them to allow space for them to handle their own stuff. And that's why we need each other. And that's why in the Bible, it speaks of lively stones put together. Like Kay's son is a stonemason. He doesn't use mortar. He looks at a space, then he looks at his rocks, and he picks out a rock that can go into that space, and he has to like wedge it and wedge it and wedge it in there until it fits. And we're like that. We're like one building made of lively stones. So the next time somebody shoots off a rocket, like goes off there deep in, just think about why you're there in that moment and what your role is. If you don't, you'll pee your pants. You'll water that seed and it will come to life. So, you want to say something?
No. It's so true.
So if we could remember in that moment when something's agitating us, or when when you're feeling like cruel, but I didn't do it, they did it, but I'm getting pleasure from it. Understand exactly what's happening. So she said, that's one. We can also hear beyond our normal hearing capacity. And it's not just hearing at the moment, but hearing a conversation that will take place in the future. Hearing a conversation that has already taken place. Not just hearing words. No. And not just, I had a master, wasn't this one, Ching Hai, but Master Chin Yin. She had perfected ears that hear 1,000 miles. It's a particular Dharma. And she practiced that Dharma. And she developed the capacity. She came to the completion stage of that Dharma. That Dharma was for a specific thing. And she'd asked for it, and it had been transmitted to her. And of course, if something's transmitted to you and you don't, develop it, then nothing happens. So we had to be careful what we said. I didn't think she really had that power. I didn't until she started coming to me, telling me something I said in the backyard of the monastery. And one day I remember when I knew that she could also read mind was she passed through the room I was in, gave me this disgusted look, and then left. Then she comes back with a brown paper bag and she takes a jar of peanut butter. Now, would you please get back to work? But all I was thinking about was peanut butter, which I had. I was in a Chinese place. They didn't have peanut butter. We just had noodles every day. And I was like dying for a peanut butter sandwich, And she went out and bought a jar of peanut butter and slammed it on my desk. Now, would you please get back to work? And that's when I got to be careful here. Because, some thoughts come up in my mind. Like, I don't know they're there until they have flashed, So I started working harder on myself. Yeah. So these are powers, you could call them powers, but they're just abilities that function on that level of consciousness, is what I'm saying to you. And so that's the heavenly ears and heavenly eyes, or divine eye and divine ear. And then reading the minds of others, knowing sometimes we can know this. And then within this first level, there are other things that is difficult for language to describe. For instance, if we meditate, then other abilities start to come forward. It was like today in choir rehearsal, it was 2 hours and a little over 2 hours. And I had an event a few days ago, and like feel really tired in my body. So I'm going to rehearsal though. I'm going to sleep. I did on my bird. So I was just singing songs. But then something happened right near the end of rehearsal. We got caught up in something. And I was the loudest one in the room. And then everybody just, it was like lit on fire. And something happened. And we were catapulted into a whole different space. And some other kinds of things showed up, like ways that we have not been able to spontaneously use our voice. I hope you caught it. I hope you saw it. And it was just amazing. And now it's probably all lost again now. But for that moment, it came forward in such an extraordinary way that we were all shocked. But I'm gonna try to go home and capture and make sure, now you gotta work. Now you gotta work at it, right? It came forth spontaneously in that moment where all of our concentration, all of our effort, all of our, what we wanted, our commitment, our dedication, just everything that we had, as middling as it was. And then, but it provided the fuel, the propulsion to jettison us into another dimension. And so it happens like that. And then suddenly we have a capacity to do something, work with our voice in a certain way, make things come forward, can write poetry all of a sudden, can draw, can, and it came about through the sincerity, the single-pointed dedication, like all of the factors that we could bring to it, but they couldn't make that possible. But they could provide the propulsion so that we could get into the territory where that would automatically function. Am I making sense? So this is what we do with our efforts. We cannot make things happen that we are reaching for, that we've heard about, that we have the confidence is possible, but we have the raw ingredients that we can use that will propel us to, or put us on a certain platform that will allow that kind of wisdom to spontaneously arise. And that's like this first level. She said, and at this first level, we can write poems and write books with beautiful style. And we could have been a non-professional writer before, but suddenly we can write. These are very material benefits that we can get when we are at that first level of consciousness. Now, the difference is whether we enter this space as an ordinary being or with a bodhisattva aspiration. So this is not just for holy people. Anybody who pays the price, who puts in the work, can enter into this space. That's why you can have good people and bad people who have extraordinary talents and capacities. And they put forth the effort to create the propulsion that takes them beyond the barrier between our ordinary run-of-the-mill consciousness and that first, I say first level, but remember that can be 100,000 different levels just within that first level. Okay. And we have awakened then to them. It's not that we have been the recipient of something. Not that someone gave us something. There was a time that I understood them in that way, that they were gifts, you know. And because I happen to be in the church, I call them gifts of the Spirit. If you weren't in the church, you wouldn't call them gifts of the Spirit. You might call them something else, you know. But there I call it. But now I see it's not a gift. It is awakening to something, to a nature and a capacity that we already have. It's already there. It's like if there's a seed, I don't care how much water you dump in that hole, nothing's going to grow. So whatever rises up out of us is because the seed was there. So these things are in that space, that heaven, that consciousness. She's trying to find words that can make a person not get caught up on the words, but find space they can rest in, so they can listen, so they can hear. But only because we have awakened to them, watered them, they became alive. So now we can make use of them. The only difference between that one who uses them for selfish gain, or when they think about it, they think that, you know, this is mine, I created it, it's mine, I own it. But if they understood the word create in a different way, and it's one reason why I just personally, I tried to find a word other than create, because it's been stacked up and it has a certain connotation in the mind, maybe not in the mind of that particular author, but just I'm talking about in the world, they have an idea about creating. But we are awakening to a seed that's already there. Mm-hmm. And when it awakens as a bodhisattva, we understand that it's for the sake of all beings because of the law of equality. The law of equality. And this has to get into us deeply because the law of self is very deep and very strong in us. She says, okay, of course, I cannot tell you everything because of time. And it's not necessary to listen to all the beautiful things about cakes and candies and never eat them. So I just, a kind of appetizer, I give you a little bit. But if you want to eat them, that's another thing. Now, if we go a little bit beyond this level to the second level, so obviously I'm not gonna, I've got like 10 minutes, so I'm not gonna get through all of the levels today. A little bit beyond this level to the second level, we just call it second for the sake of simplicity. We will have a lot more abilities than the first one. But the most striking achievement we can have that level is eloquence. The ability to explain, the ability to debate. To explain and to debate seems to be an ability to conquer another. But it's not about conquering another, not about winning the debate. And if one is caught in their self-consciousness, it will be about that. we have a connotation of debate here in, the Western world that is the complete opposite of what the word that has been translated as debate means in Tibet and in China. Their manner of making sure that you understand something thoroughly beyond a few words is to keep questioning. And that questioning lets people know in short order whether you really understand it or not. And one key to understanding is the ability to listen. Because the tendency is in an untaught, untrained, undisciplined person is they go with the first thing that they hear, whatever started the conversation. And then before you're 4 words in, your mind is already formulating a rebuttal. But this practice of listening helps us to simply be present fully 100% to what someone is saying, not taking anything personally, but really tapping in, listening, so that you can know along with, because what level is this? Second, right? And what came with the first? Hearing beyond limits of space, seeing beyond, and the mind grabbing mind. So one who enters into this second dimension, debate has nothing to do with championing and winning your argument, because the self is not involved. It's not engaged. So they're fully 100% available and present with all their consciousness. So that you said this, but they know you meant that. I mean, of course, if they're asking for clarification and there's some confusion, you can't just go on the question, because the person doesn't really know what question, what they're questioning. They don't understand something. So the minute a question is posed, you have to be able to know what the real question is, or what's behind it, or that today, at this moment, you can give, there's no set answer for that particular person, because depending on factors that create the present moment, you might give them a different response 30 minutes from now, yesterday, or tomorrow. Because you have to take in the totality of the situation. What is going on, to know where is the opening to bring clarity to that mind that's in that space of confusion at this moment. And so this is a quality, so when we start to have these things, it has been translated as powers, and actually it is a power, but not thinking of it in terms of power the way we think about power that supports and sustains our own sense of ourselves. It's what makes people, of course, because they don't have it, then they don't understand it. If they had it, then they'd understand it. But it's what makes people reject the notion of any kind of spiritual power, because they see abuses in the world with people who have capabilities. And so, or they've never seen anybody with any, so think it doesn't exist. Those two extremes. But if we get the right understanding, we can cultivate and develop the right intention that would water, because all of these seeds are also in us. And they're ours. Nobody gave them to us. Nobody taught them to us. That's part of the nature of a Tathagata. We're just asleep Tathagatas. And it's about waking up, not about getting something. So when I was young in my spiritual practice, I needed daycare. I needed somebody to keep me, somebody to change my diaper, somebody give me a bottle, somebody let me know what this discomfort is. It's because I'm hungry, or Then I needed somebody to teach me how to tie my shoes. I needed somebody to help me dress, get my clothes on. I need somebody to take me to school, I need somebody to teach me how to tell time. And so I sought a refuge, and I was provided with a refuge that could do those things. Now, if I thought that's all that refuge was good for, then when I was hungry, I go to them. That's the time, right? It's the time we go when we need something. Crying at the altar. But later, two things happen. Either I find out that they have other skills and abilities and ways of leading, directing, guiding, helping me, or they may even say, I got a lot of children to take care of, and this was my vow. Go see them. John over there, Susan, she's good at that. She'll help you with that. Doesn't matter whether I'm teaching 5th grade or teaching 12th grade. I still have to meet a certain quality of standard or competency, but I might just have an affinity for the children. Or don't give me no children, I'll take 12th graders. But that's a personal choice based, and so we need all of these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that have all of these different vows. So if I even go to the medicine, Buddha does a particular thing. It is an emanation of certain qualities. Personification, emanation of certain qualities. Different than Vajrasattva. Vajrasattva is like when you come, like, I need Vajrasattva a lot. That's why I memorize that. There's a short Vajrasattva chant. What is it? On Vajrasattva? Okay, that's it. I do the long one because I know me. I know I need the long one. Because Vajrasattva's vow was to take on, to help share the burden of the offenses that we rack up. We can call it sins, call it mistakes. We can call it, mistake, it means not willful. A lot of things I do is just willful, but I know that, and I'm working. That's all you got to do with it. But then you do have to really work on it, though. Sometimes I just have to cut my phone off, because if you watch certain things, then you get into some kind of, I don't know how it works, but the next thing you know, every time you look at your phone, they sent you another one. I was watching Karen's at one time, Oh my goodness. I had to start going to like cartoons just to get out of the queue of Karen's, Anybody here named Karen? I don't mean you if it is. Okay.
Just my personality. Not my name.
Yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. But so we think we don't know ourselves, but we sort of do. We sort of know ourselves. We just don't want other people to know us. And that's why I'm encouraging you, because while you can hide from me, you can't fake the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Now, the Buddha Master would say often, he says, people will come and they will lie to me. He said, if I use my energy to apply my mind to that, I can know they're lying. But he said, why bother? Why use my mind for that? He says, it's not like I know everything, but turn my mind to it, I can penetrate. Says I can penetrate. But I don't want to waste my time doing that. He said, so you can lie to me. He said, I won't even be mad with you because I know it doesn't have anything to do with me. He said, but now the dominant practice. That's another thing, you got to watch out for them because they will get you. Because that's what they do. They protect the truth. So I was like, oh, okay, so I don't want to take no dominant protective practices right now. When I first went to him, I did not take any dominant protection practices. And the reason was because I knew I wasn't committed to working at the level that I thought would be required for him to work with me. I knew I wasn't going to put it in the work. And so why create problems for myself? I just left it alone. But had the aspiration, I every day have the aspiration to improve, to be better. And then one day, it's like dropping peas on a scale and it tips the scale. One day you drop into it. You can't drop into it until you, but this ain't a trick question. And sort of, you can't drop into it until you drop into it. When the pea comes that shifts the balance of the weight, the scale will tip. That's it. So when certain things don't happen the way I want them to happen, or I can't do what I want to do, or can't be as good as I want to be, I know that I need to add one more pea. Let's see if that does it. And if not that, how about I add one more pea and see if that does it? And so we don't have to get frustrated. We don't have to think I'm a worm, I'm a slug. No. And so the Buddha would say all the time, when I was just an unenlightened bodhisattva, that says it all. Right? So just think of yourself as an unenlightened bodhisattva. But bodhisattva, it's not a brag, it's not a badge, we don't have to feel shame to think of it. Somebody asked me, could they pray to Pannavati and take him on as a bodhisattva? I told them no. But you could think of him as an unenlightened bodhisattva. And there's a difference. But I understood the motivation for the question. I knew the love for him and, and the heart connection. And so the answer for that person was no. Because I'm a little mixed up in the thinking. So these are things that will begin to come forth, and sometimes immediately and spontaneously, sometimes gradually. But these are your signs and your proofs to let you know where you are. And that is no place that you could possibly be other than where you are. And so when you're not where you want to be, you don't have to get frustrated. You can just simply think, I don't have the capacity for that to come forward yet. So we just continue to do what we're doing. If we're washing a plate that has dried up food on it, there ain't nothing else to do. but keep washing the plate. That's it. There's nothing else to do. You don't have to try a new technique. Don't have to try a new way. Don't have to go anywhere else. I just put that dish rag back in the water that has the Dawn on it. The Dawn is the best. That has the Dawn on it. No, I feel like I have Dawn right here, and I just keep polishing the plate. That's it. And then it dissolves. So stay kind with yourself. Stay present. Know that our actions are our only true home. So in everything that we do and that we say and that we think, be kind with yourself. That could be being gentle, or that could be being fierce. But only you really know, right? And you'll see these transformations take place. If we start stressing, trying to press ourselves beyond our capacity, we slow ourselves down. That's why he's saying at this point, he did some intensive training with us last week. Now he's saying, oh, just be ordinary. He doesn't mean be ordinary, untaught, undisciplined. He's just saying there are times we need to vamp up our inspiration and aspiration. And there's times that we need to buy. You got to know what time it is.